Hello, welcome to Sky Border Red as Nottingham Forest return to the City Ground to take on Brentford on Sunday in front of the Sky Sports cameras. We're going to look ahead to that game against the Brentford team. We've lost 4 man players to injury. So to discuss if an opportunity has presented itself, I'm joined first of all by Reds fan Michael Temple. Temps, good morning. How are you?
Mate, just so excited to talk about the battle for 12th.
Better than the battle for 17th, certainly. I'd rather that. So, yeah, can't complain. And returning to the podcast after his appearance on Monday is Reds fan and actor Asha Ali. Asha, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm here. I'm back with an improved microphone. So thank you, trolls. And I include my own family in that.
Yes, you had family feedback and a couple of comments in the YouTube. So you've taken action, which shows your commitment.
Action, man. I don't mess around.
Right, I was following the comments here before we started, people saying how late we would start, and I think we were only 2 minutes late. Liam said 11:15. That is pretty scandalous. Someone said, were we 30 minutes late last time? No, I just scheduled the stream for the wrong time and changed it. So, I mean, that's incompetence rather than just pure laziness. So, yeah, good to have everyone with us anyway, watching along live, people around the world as well. I should give a shout out to, what was the chat's name? Heath Moore, who's in New Zealand watching at 11 p.m. And there's a few people dotted around the world, as we were saying before we started streaming. New Zealand, Australia, America, places in Europe as well. So good to have you with us. Right, before I get started with the chat, I should say thanks to everyone who voted for us to be shortlisted for the Football Content Awards. I shamelessly begged for votes for the best Premier League podcast, but we also got shortlisted for best club content creator for the Premier League as well. So that must have been a lot of writing votes. So very much appreciated for that. So if you could lend us your support again, go to footballcontentawards.com/voting. The link is in the description and I'll drop it in on Facebook as well. So yes, thank you very much for your support thus far. And if you can help us out again, that'd be great. Some of the podcasts we're up against are massive. Like Anfield Rap's got 600,000 Twitter followers, and another one, some youth who does Man United streams, got 200,000 followers on Instagram. So yeah, we're up against it, but we'll do our best to fly the flag. So yes, thank you very much again. Right, looking ahead to this game, I think Greg was saying, Asha, that there are rivals now, and Temps was joking there about the battle for 12th. How are you seeing this game, just in general, against a Brentford team? A lot of Forest fans don't really like it very much.
No, but I do agree that I think they are our closest rivals. And in a way, I think we're actually quite similar. I mean, obviously, we're not similar in terms of size of fan base, history, ground, et cetera, et cetera. We obviously win. But when it comes to, and not recruitment either, obviously they go their way in recruitment and we go ours. But in terms of the way they play, they don't seem to be like us. They don't seem to be necessarily dogmatic in one style. I think you've seen, if you watched the Monday Night Football where Thomas Frank, was on, a lot of fans would have watched it. It was before the Burnley game. You would have seen him go through, their styles of play and how adaptable they are. And if you look at it, it's very similar to us. Against the so-called bigger teams, they go away and they play 5 at the back, 3/5. At home, what we're trying to do at home, they seem to play a sort of 4-3-3, more of a nominally kind of attacking system, which is kind of what we're trying to do in some ways. You not think?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a fair point. They play quite similar to us. They try and create those. I've said this before. Those 3 or 4 big chances in a game,
but also it's the speed as well. They're just like us. They will press, but if that fails, they're not a team that's going to, like a Burnley who turned up. They're not just going to keep pressing if it's failing. They're happy to kind of sit back and defend and get into a low block or whatever. And then rip you apart on the counter. Does that sound like anyone? Sounds like us, I think.
That's why they want to sign Brennan, isn't it, as well? Before I come to Temps, hello to talking about times, 11 p.m. in New Zealand, 5 a.m. in Midwest America for Richard Spray. So good effort there as well. Good to have you with us. Temps, do you agree with what Asha says about, there are quite a few parallels between the clubs and it's going to be a decent matchup on Sunday?
Yeah, there are. I mean, it doesn't matter the route you've taken to get there, does it? We both now feel that we have a chance of establishing ourselves as a firm mid-table side. I was just distracted by a comment from Mark Hill. Who's a better actor, Asha Ali or Morgan Gibbs-White? I think he's referring to the theatrical fighting.
Definitely Gibbs-White.
Yeah, well, maybe so. I think we'll hire Rodri and see if he can have a little ding-dong with Asha and see who hits the deck first. I'm encouraged by some differences between us and Brentford. Watching their last couple of games, they have two weaknesses for me. One is defending against the big man. You've only got to look at the goal they conceded against Arsenal, which was knock down and score. I think the second goal at Everton was a corner, wasn't it, which was nodded in. But perhaps more concerningly is the manner in which they're still trying to play out from the back with a relatively newly established back four. Collins and Pinnock in particular do dwell on the ball in their own third, and with an organised press, you can recover possession and score, as Arsenal did with Reece Nelson, as Everton did for the Calvert-Lewin goal, which was the third. So if you've watched any tape of Brentford in the last 2 or 3 games, there are a couple of negative facets of their game developing, which perhaps weren't there in last year's side, and the side which has established itself very firmly in those mid-tabled spots over the last few years under Thomas Frank. So yeah, we probably are at similar points in terms of what we can expect to get out of this season. I think that the games against teams in and around us now are going to mean the Fulhams, the Brentfords, the Crystal Palaces, rather than the Burnleys, the Sheffield Uniteds, the Lutons, who we probably expect ourselves to be a long way past. But interesting game in prospect. All 3 results are possible, and I think we need to jump on their recent weaknesses if we're going to come out the right side of this one.
Yeah, as Temps says, recent weaknesses. They've got 6 points from 6 games, but they haven't won in 4. They've lost the last 2. And if you look at their injury list, and obviously they're without Ivan Toney, who's would get into almost every Premier League team. I would say they're missing Kevin Schade long term, Ben Mee, Mikhail Damsgaard, Shandon Baptiste, Josh Da Silva, and Rico Henry. So that's pretty much a chunk of regular players there. I mean, Baptiste isn't, but Rico Henry's an excellent left back. Schade is their record signing, I think. We know what Ben Mee can do as a rock at the back, and Temps discussed that weakness defensively. It's a bit of a cliche, Asha, isn't it? But it does feel like if you're going to play them, now feels like a good time to get at them. Yeah,
I think so. And that's not necessarily a massive compliment to them. I just think, it is what it is. But, losing players like Ben Mee, he's so good in the air, and the way they set up, it seems, and from what I've seen of them, they're quite happy to let, wide players get down the flanks and get crosses in, because guys like Pinnock, Aya, and Mee can deal with it. But Schade is an interesting one, because I was kind of looking forward to seeing him. That'll be a big miss. He's got, quite a bit of pace. But it'll be interesting. For me, it's going to be either we cancel each other out in a kind of similar way, depending on how we set up. And I know we'll get to, lineups and whatever that we've kind of predicted or would like to see. But, just as long as it's not as bad, and I don't think it would be as bad a showing as last season at the City Ground against him.
I suppose the flip side is Temps trying to put the other case to Brentford, look at us and think we're still working out who exactly we are after the transfer window. We've seen Cooper make a couple of changes. Will they come here thinking, actually, this is a chance for us to arrest our form as well?
Yeah, I mean, that's how you set up any sporting side, isn't it? You have to make them feel better than the sum of their parts. You have to add value to players. And when injuries strike, as they have for both teams, to a lesser extent us, you have to make amends and crack on. But yeah, of course they will. Brentford don't see themselves as wanting to occupy that kind of mid-table obscurity, 12th, 13th, 14th. They see themselves as having kicked on. They've been disrupted by the ban handed down to Ivan Toney, and having to find a new way to play, not only with new signings, not only in his absence, but also with a slight style change to kind of counteract those challenges that have been forced upon them. So yeah, of course, Brentford will be confident. I think Asha kind of hinted at it there, but we're all scarred by what happened in the corresponding fixture last year. We had a ding dong away from here as well. They're a dangerous side. It's one or two players that I'm a big fan of. I think Vissa and Mbuemo are particularly hardworking. They're not your typical focal point of a team that just occupies the width of the box and occupies centre halves. They do drift between the lines. They are comfortable to pick the ball up out wide, and they have a real good understanding between themselves. So there are still some weapons in this side, even with the players that they're denied, and we will have to be on it to get a result from this one.
Let's look at our lineups then and give us some options and some names to talk about. Temps and Asha picked theirs, which are quite different. The one I would have picked is closer to Asha's, I must admit. But not that Temps is bad. I like it as well. But I've also done one that's a bit of an alternative one to discuss that. So we'll start with Temps. I'll read it out for the benefit of people listening, and I'll read it out a bit slower. I feel like I neglect the iTunes and Spotify audience a bit. So this is 4-2-3-1. It says 4-3-3 on the screen. It's actually 4-2-3-1. Matt Turner in goal. A back four of Aurier, Worrell, Niakate and Ola Aina. Two sitting in front, Sangare and Dominguez. Then Gibbs White, Ilanga and Hudson-Odoi. In behind, Tyrell Wanyi. Temps, what's the thinking with that formation? And is it still a fluid one for you, or is it a proper 4-2-3-1?
Primary concern is how do we get the best out of Morgan Gibbs White. I said last time that this is now Morgan Gibbs White's team. Brennan Johnson was a very important factor and perhaps overshadowed Gibbs White in certain games because his output was directly goals and assists. However, now this shape removes some defensive responsibility from Morgan Gibbs White. Sangare will become what we expect him to become when he settles in, screens the back four, and allows Morgan Gibbs White to be a luxury player, to get on the ball early in moves and to be at the heart of everything that we do. Most importantly, looking ahead of him, he's got three very willing runners who make intelligent plays and all have a goal in them. We've seen it from all three of these players this season. They've been on the mark. I think the chemistry will come, but they need to be fed by the new linchpin of this side, which will emerge as Morgan Gibbs White. Back four, I want to see Aurier back in his best position. I'm not sold on Montiel at this point. I hope he comes good, but for me, Serge Aurier is far and away the most complete right back at this club at this moment in time. I'm desperate to see the back four deployed, not only in this game, but in the games against Luton and Palace as well. Biggest challenge, picking two centre halves. There are trade-offs to be made in anybody that wears these shirts. Niakate, perhaps our most complete athlete in terms of pace and strength. You could make a case for Willy Bolly defending against the Brentford long throw and trying to take advantage of the balls into the box that they've struggled with in recent weeks. Worrell, I feel, is our best defender for the ball in behind and for distribution. Lacks pace compared to some of his counterparts. And at some point, we're all going to be surprised when Felipe is declared fit and parachutes in. So there are lots of potential combinations that could occur there. Aina maintains his place on pure merit. I think he's been a very consistent player so far this season. Deserves the backing, as does Turner for the same reason. And we all want to see Dominguez in a game where he can be on the front foot at home. So that's me. But the principal factor in picking this side was how do we get the best out of Morgan Gibbs White?
You wouldn't want a three-man midfield then? You would stick with because it's basically four forwards and two sitters there. You wouldn't want to drop in a third midfielder for extra protection or not?
Well, there's some defensive responsibility for those three, isn't there? They're going to be behind the ball at times. They're not pressing the fullbacks and then just making their way back to the halfway line. That there is some fluidity required from Hudson-Odoi and Ilanga. But we spoke 2 games ago about where we're at in trying to transition from a counter-attacking team that makes the best of 30% possession and a front foot side that can dominate teams at home. We knew they were going to make changes for the Man City game out of necessity, but this run of fixtures now will allow us to see if what we deployed against Burnley and Sheffield United in the league can be made into a consistent change in style that helps us kick on from needing to survive to aspiring to achieve, climb the table and pick off sides at home. So I think we'll learn an awful lot from this game, and I fully expect to see a back four and Gibbs White in that luxury spot just behind the 9.
Very good, very good. Right, before we come on to Asha's team, over 350 people watching. Do us a favour, do like and subscribe. And if you're on iTunes, give us a 5-star rating if you would, and a few words of review. That helps. And I do like reading them, and haven't had one for quite a while. So that would be great. Right, we'll come on to Asha's team. And I say this is quite similar to one I'd like to see. So we'll chat around that, and I'll just read it out again for people listening, not watching. Once again, Mac Turner in goal. Same back four as Temps, Aurier, Worrell, Niakate and Aina. Then a 3-man midfield of Ryan Yates, Sangare and Dominguez. 3 up front, Hudson-Odoi, Gibbs White, Awonyi. It's not a straight 4-3-3. It's a bit wonky. I'll let Asha talk you through that when he unmutes himself. Asha, give us your thoughts on that side. What's the thinking behind it?
Yeah, so yeah, like you said, it's not necessarily a straight 4-3-3. I know these things, these things that you feed it into don't necessarily like it when you start getting asymmetrical. But no, I wouldn't go for the flat 4-3-3 like it is there. But the main thing with this is the matchup, really, because I don't think Brentford are going to turn up and pay us the compliment of going 5 at the back. Like Thomas Frank was talking about on Monday Night Football, playing against the bigger teams with a more defensive shape like that. So I don't think they're going to do that. And they do like to play a 3 in the middle. And I think this, for me, it's all about Sangare in this one. This is why I went with this. I think we need to ease the kind of defensive and almost the passing kind of burden on him, just while he's adapting. And I think Dominguez, his showing against Man City, he looks like he's a good 8. So if you're saying Sangare is a 6, he's a very good, Dominguez is a very good 8. And then you think, well, who could come in and ease the defensive burden to a certain extent? And then you look at players, and for me, Mangala doesn't seem to be that guy. He's more of a kind of Dominguez style 8. He does a bit in both sides. I'm not quite sure what his, shtick is necessarily. And like you've talked about previously on the podcast, you're like, what does he do? What's his, is he just a bit of a jack of all? And when you have that kind of thought where you think, oh, well, who could come in and help him defensively? There's only one guy for the job, surely. It's Ryan Yates. You need a bit of need. If you could get Ryan Yates and you could sit him on Jensen, that'd be interesting because he's one of their better players. And if you sit Yates on him and you have him kicking at the back of his legs and employing a bit of the dark arts, winning a few fouls like he does, getting blocks in, I think it would free up Sangare a bit to kind of because he is adapting. You can see that it's the pace of it. It's so different to the French league and so different to the Dutch league. And I had a look back at him in those teams, in Toulouse and in PSV, and I had a look at the sort of shapes they were employing him in, and he always seemed to have a Dominguez type and a sort of Yatesy type. He always had a box-to-box player alongside him, whether it was in a 2 or in a 3. Toulouse, he played more of a 2, whereas in at PSV it was a 3. And I know there's been a few sound bites coming out that Forest want him for more of the kind of role he played at Toulouse than PSV. But I think not to go against a fully funded analytics department, but I think he's more of the PSV type of player that we need. I think you need to get some players in around him to kind of ease the burden a bit, share it out, and then see what he can kind of do. I thought he was one of those heat-seeking missile type number 6s where you just stick him in there and he just destroys everything. But I know it's a small sample size with us, but looking back at his PSV stuff as well, yeah, he can do that to a certain extent, but I don't think that's his game completely. I think you're wasting him if you just leave him there, because I don't actually think his tackling is necessarily up there in higher percentiles or whatever. And I'm sure people that look at stats might prove that wrong, but for me, that frees him up in this kind of a lineup, but it also frees up Gibbs White, because in this, I know it's the flat 4-3-3 in the picture, but just to describe it, it's more of I would go more of a kind of 4-3-1-2, which we've kind of done before. I know it just sounds like we're just, doing phone numbers here, but it's sort of, we did this last season a few times as well. Like, don't forget, when we shifted over into a 4 at the back, this was the kind of shape we were getting. We were getting a diamond in the middle. We were getting Johnson on the right in a kind of weird floating role where he was kind of coming in, but he was always the outlet on that right-hand side. So what I'm saying is that we would replace him with Callum Hudson-Odoi and stick him over the left, because it looks like he's, more comfortable on the left coming in. And then you've got Taiwo obviously up front, but just that kind of a formation for me, not only does it match up and make everyone's job slightly easier, because like Temps says, we are in another kind of, not quite back to square one, but we are sort of wondering again, what is our best 11 because of the influx of players. So I feel like a lineup like that would make everyone's jobs simpler, because you'd know your man, but also it would free up Morgan Gibbs-White and it would free up Sangare to kind of, settle in a little easier.
Outrageous comment from Greg Oram here. I'll read it out because it's for
cheers, Greg.
Archer's far too knowledgeable, does far too much sensible research for this podcast. That's outrageous. And
that's what I'm here for, Greg.
It's trumped only by the comment that he's so convincing and articulate in his delivery that he could make a case for Danny Sonner starting.
Yeah, I didn't mind Danny Sonner. I loved his hair. Great hair.
No, I like that lineup, and it would be my exact lineup. Apart from, I'm still waiting on Felipe to be fit. I mean, if he's declared fit, then he's going to, he's going to play. I just wonder if we'll wait and see him till post international break. Even now, there's no point rushing him back to get injured. But I do like that team. Sangare is an interesting one, Temps, isn't he? Like Asha says, maybe giving him a bit of a babysitter, for want of a better term, in Yates to help him settle out and not have to dominate in midfield. Could that be a good tactic to ease him in? Because we haven't seen the best of him just yet in a very small sample size of 2 games.
Well, historically, we've always been a better side with Ryan Yates in it because of the energy and everything else. But my hunch is that we've signed Sangare to do the work that Ryan Yates does, but to bring a bit of quality as well. And I'm not sure that Cooper would pick Ryan Yates to do some of the dirty work that Sangare does, when he perhaps sees this signing, and it is a massive statement signing, and one that we perhaps didn't expect to squeeze through until very, very late in the window when some Champions League clubs withdrew from the race. I can't help but think he now feels that Sangare's presence is the license to play someone like Dominguez, someone like Gibbs-White, someone like Mangala, someone with that bit more quality on the ball. Because what's Ryan Yates's relative weakness? It's distribution. He wins a lot of ball. He plays it sensibly, but he's never going to come up with a 50-yard ping. He's never going to score from 25 yards. He's never going to do anything other than what Ryan Yates does, which sounds like I'm trivializing him. I'm not. He's the heartbeat of the team. I've said before, while he's not our best player, you can make a case for him being our most important player in recent times. That would be an horrendous centre mid to play against if you had both of them playing. You'd be denied space. They'd constantly be after you, sniping away. I just feel that the signing of Sangare means less minutes for Ryan Yates. I understand the romance of Ryan Yates. I'm one of his biggest fans. He's going to have a big role to play. I just can't help but think that Cooper feels he can get a more offensively minded player into that mix whenever Sangare starts.
We had an interesting question in the week on Twitter. From, I think it was Dan Cook was the person who sent it in, about Danilo, saying he's already been forgotten. I don't think he has really. Just if he's not fit, then you don't really discuss him that much. But it was an interesting one to address. Where does Danilo fit in, Asha, when he's fit again? Would he be in your 11, or would he have to force his way back in and get opportunities off the bench initially?
I don't think he would come straight in. It depends. We need to see a couple more. I don't know how long he's out, but I want to see a bit more from Dominguez in terms of, I want to see him continue his development, because he was very good against Man City. Obviously, that was against a tough side. So it'll be interesting to see how he does against, sort of more comparable teams. But I don't think he comes straight back in. The games he did play this season, he sort of looked a bit like he did at the beginning when he came in. You know, a little bit sort of out of sorts, a little bit, you know, not sure of his position. So yeah, I mean, if you're talking about a Danilo who finished the season last season, then of course he comes straight back in, but he's not quite that yet. And I think with the arrival of Dominguez, I think that changes the conversation. He's definitely not someone who you're like, oh, he's just a bench guy now, Danilo. Of course not. But it's what Cooper wants, isn't it? He wants that competition. It's what any team wants. You want a lot of competition, and we've kind of got that. But they are. It does interest me that, you know, in all this kind of analytics, kind of driven recruitment or whatever, that we have ended up with three quite similar profile players. You know, Mangala, Danilo, and Dominguez. They're probably all, for a start, they're probably all the same height. But you know, there's very similar. They all do similar things. You know, so. I am a bit surprised that we've gone there, but obviously that Dominguez deal, like, you know, you sign that with your eyes closed. You know, you move Remo Freuler on. Don't want to talk about him too much, but you know, he didn't. It's obvious to everyone he didn't quite fit our system. Very good player. I watch a lot of Serie A. Very good player. You know, he over there he was called the conductor, and rightly so. You know, he was someone who the play would go through. But for us, he was a conductor in a different sense. You know, it all just sort of went through him and out the other side and into nothingness. But yeah, so, you know, long story short, I don't think he comes straight in.
I suppose one of the points Dan was making, Temps, is it was around Morgan Gibbs-White, actually, that him and Danilo forged a bit of a link. We saw those finals, like that goal against Southampton where Danilo ran onto it and stuff like that. Is maybe, I think, Dan could, I think he's in the comments, he could correct me if I'm wrong, but it's hampered Gibbs-White a little bit not having Danilo in that sort of form that we saw at the end of last season as well.
Danilo puts pressure on Ryan Yates and Dominguez. I think he could displace either of those guys. Our Kiwi friend Heath Moore has called for Dominguez, Sangare, Danilo. And you can see why. Danilo's a more dynamic player than Ryan Yates and more explosive. But it's what do you want in the mix? If we're talking about high press and trying to dispossess Brentford in their own third, as Everton and Arsenal have had success with in recent weeks, of course you want Sangare and Ryan Yates as part of that. So there could be a tactical nuance like that, which would make the case for player A over player B. There's also still this possibility that we could try and reprogram a player in the manner we did with Jack Colback or Matty Cash and try and make a dynamic fullback out of someone like Danilo. If you just have to go the Harry Redknapp means of getting your best 11 on the pitch by any method. We've seen, well, Chris Coe's another example. Plenty of players who've been here in the past who've aspired to be midfielders for Nottingham Forest, but out of necessity, have found a lot of joy and at times been able to run games from fullback. So I wouldn't put that beyond the realms of possibility, because we have now stockpiled so many central midfielders that you can make a case for. There's really no wrong decision to make. Mangala, Danilo could easily come into this side, hold their own, put in a performance which commands them being reselected the following week. And that's a fantastic position to be in. There's going to be lots of changes to the blend of that based on opposition, our own system, tactics, injuries and everything else. But for me, what Danilo was at the back end of last season and what he can become necessitates that he starts games for this club at some point in time. And I can't help but feel that Sangare is the only central midfielder that's inked in when fit. So pressure on Yates and Dominguez for sure. Another comment in there, is Morgan Gibbs-White untouchable? Yeah, I think he is. I think in whatever system we play from this point in time, Morgan Gibbs-White will be a part of it.
That midfield. I don't hate that midfield, that Sangare, Dominguez, Danilo midfield going forward, but that's obviously dependent on Sangare firing, and getting him into where he feels comfortable and more of the kind of YouTube highlight reel Sangare, which I think is a little bit of time away.
Yeah. If we didn't have a load of fullbacks already, then a buccaneering Danilo left wing back type thing would be interesting. So one of the comments, James says O'Brien's playing left back for Middlesbrough. That feels like a bit of a waste. I don't know. I honestly haven't seen that. So if that's wrong, then apologies. But that feels like a bit of a waste, certainly. I did do an alternative lineup. So I'll put it out. I know Steve Cooper loves a 3 at the back. So this is a potential one. I do think we'll play 4 at the back. in this one. But just if he were to go a 3, it could be this. Turner in goal. I've put Felipe in because I knew the other guys had put Worrell in, so just an alternative name. That could be any combination of Worrell, Felipe, Bolly, and Niakate I've got here. I think Scott McKenna's probably going to have to bide his time now. Wingbacks of Aurier and Aina. I assume Tavares is injured, but I would pick those two anyway, personally, for this game. Dominguez and Sangare as 2 central midfielders. And I've put a front 3 of Elanga, Awoniyi, and Hudson-Odoi because there are people in the comments, and as Temps has discussed there, who would say that Gibbs White should be given a rest. I don't see it happening, and I don't personally think it should. I would, as we've discussed at length, play him into form. And I don't even think he's out of form particularly. I just don't think things are quite coming off for him. Now we've got this run of games. He has an opportunity to deliver perhaps more goals and assists than he has. I think he's got 2 assists so far, both against Man United, which isn't awful. But I suppose Temps, I'll come back to you, Temps, and I'll go to Asha. Asha said on Monday that Gibbs White is retained, and I think he said free pass or whatever, and you said he's untouchable. I mean, if Morgan goes 6 games against teams we think he should be getting, returns against, apart from Liverpool, if he doesn't have goals and assists in that time, then actually does the manager have to look at it?
I mean, who do you replace him with, though? We're all talking about it's the shiny new toy syndrome, isn't it? Santos. What really do we all know about Santos? He's so young. By all accounts, by biased Chelsea accounts, obviously, that he's done very well in pre-season, and he's got them all excited. But if he was that good, why wasn't he? Why didn't he stay? Like you knew, like if he is a 10, or even if he is an 8, you knew that he's probably not got a great chance of getting in our starting 11. So I don't understand that one. That's obviously that kind of unknown quantity. Could be amazing, that kind of spin that you put on it. But I just don't know where you go. And I think, like you say, this run of games coming up is probably the period where he turns and, he gets back into form, and this conversation, is pointless. So I think when I said free pass, it's almost a free pass as well, because there's no one else who can replace him, because I don't feel like he's going to abandon that kind of 10 tip of the diamond type player. I don't think he would do that. And also we're so used to seeing him now, it would it'd look a bit naked now in that middle if we didn't have that type of a player in there. So I don't know who you replace him with, but again, I think this next run of games is where he starts firing again.
Yeah, they let Scarpa go because he obviously had so much faith in Gibbs White that they thought there was such a distance between them that they were willing to let him go. I suppose Temps, the thing you would do is play this formation of a 3 of Elanga, Awoniyi, and Hudson-Odoi, and abandon, like Asha says, that advanced midfielder, the 10 position that Gibbs White generally plays. What would you feel about that?
You called my team last week a casino 11 because it was a bit too offensive for Man City. This is a clickbait 11 that omits Morgan Gibbs White, Joe Worrell, and Ryan Yates. So I think you're just putting this one up to pull our chain. In fact, if you can bring up the selection from Andrew Levers, who's just made a YouTube comment, Andrew's managed to pick a team that doesn't involve a goalkeeper. So he's got 11 players and nobody with the gloves on. And I think that'd probably draw level with your side, which omits our most creative player 2 weeks after we've sold our most explosive player, and doesn't have the continuity or leadership of Yates and Worrell. So I'm dismissing your team out of hand.
My alternative team. I always said my team would be like ours. I once picked a predicted 11 with 12 players in as well when I wrote a piece. I remember that was bad. I think that I wrote too many down. The piece written didn't have it 12, but when I wrote the list down, it certainly did. Right, I think that covers most of what we were going to discuss. Anything you want to add before we depart, Temps?
No, looking forward to the game and this series of games. I think it will make clear how we intend to play and how effective we are at playing it. And there's every reason to think we can progress with fixtures against Palace, Luton and Brentford.
It's a good point, Asha, isn't it? Now that we can't say the season starts here because that's stupid because we played 6 games and got points on the board. But now is, we've got through that bank of horrific away games bar Liverpool, and now is kind of an opportunity and a chance for us to put some, gradual build some momentum going towards Christmas. Hopefully now.
Yeah, I don't think you can say that. The season starts here. That kind of dismisses a lot of the good work that's been done. And surprisingly good work that's been done. I know it hasn't necessarily, come out in victories necessarily. Well, I think most of us are quite happy with where we are in terms of the return. Like we said on the previous pod, when you look at this start that we had last season and you compare it to this, we're making progress. But this run of fixtures, it's a good run of fixtures, and I think a lot of players will start settling down now. And I'm looking more towards the kind of likes of Sangare and Gibbs White. And it'll be interesting to see how Callum Hudson-Odoi continues his development. And also Elanga as well, because Elanga does look still very raw. But he's exciting with his pace as well. But, I'm really looking forward to this. And I think, because I'm going on Sunday as well, so this is one of those where we can start kind of getting back to that kind of fortress city ground and defending our turf and getting back to winning ways.
Can I just briefly address the Santos questions, because I think he's at risk of becoming the forgotten man. I think it'd be very, very hard to justify giving him game time and displacing the players that we've managed to recruit and retain. So a lot of you're a better player and you're out the side. Occasionally when you find a team in a pit of bad form. And Chelsea, of course, very excited to see a player playing who's shone in moments in pre-season out of their side. I just don't see how and when there's going to be an opportune moment to select him. He's not getting in ahead of Morgan Gibbs-White. He doesn't do enough defensively to displace Ryan Yates or Sangare, and the competition is only going to intensify when Danilo is fit. So for all the calls for Santos, I don't think he's anywhere near our starting 11 at this moment in time. And it could just be one of those that didn't work out, or a signing that was made in anticipation of others not quite getting across the line. And he's found himself a little bit trapped and hamstrung with the window slamming closed. So no room in my side anytime soon for Santos. And I'd be really surprised to see him get any minutes from the bench, given that we're either going to make negative changes to try and shore up and retain a result, or inject some of the players that we've signed to go and force a goal. So yeah, I think significant risk of him quickly becoming a bit of a forgotten man.
I think it was the latter case, wasn't it? I imagine, I don't know this for sure, they probably thought we're not going to get Sangare, we might not get Dominguez, we've got to get a defensive midfielder. And Santos, as we said, can play basically anywhere in midfield. And now he might find himself the odd man out. It's like you say, if they make a change, the defensive change has been Ryan Yates. The attacking change could be Mangala. So Santos might find himself the odd man. He probably needs an opportunity from the bench, but it might be difficult for him to get it, which will be a shame because he does seem, he's obviously massively talented, but it's just where you fit him in. You can only fit, unless you're Andrew, you can only pick 11 players in football. So yeah, it is a tricky one, certainly. Right, nothing else to add from me. Mikey recommended a film which got panned on Monday by a couple of people, so I can't recommend. I did watch the most recent Matrix film yesterday and was disappointed in that, so I can't recommend that, having very much enjoyed the first one and not particularly the second, third or fourth now. So yeah, nothing to add from me. Asha, did you have anything to actually add that you wanted to say? I kind of threw some general stuff at you.
We should ask Asha for film recommendations, not Mike.
I'll give you a film. Yeah, go on then. I'll give you one. Why not? Well, just one off the top of my head that I saw a couple of weeks back. Thunder Road. Go find that. Thunder Road. It's on Netflix. It's a guy, an American actor who basically got it all off the ground himself. He did it all. He wrote it, directed it, edited it, probably did the catering. That kind of a story. It's lovely to see. It's a very short, funny kind of film. It's about 90 minutes. It's a bit bonkers, but it's clever.
Have you seen Skeleton Twins? I was going to watch that yesterday, but I would have had to pay for it.
No. Have you seen Skeletons?
No.
You should see that. That's an East Midlands film. It's a very, very sort of out there kind of almost supernatural kind of comedy. You find it, Skeletons. It's got a couple of Nottingham actors in as well.
Sounds good. We might have wandered slightly off topic as we always do in these preview shows. So we'll probably leave it there. Thanks very much to everyone who's watched along and commented. Very much appreciated. As I said, if you can manage to vote for us in the Football Content Awards, that would be great. Best Club Podcast Premier League, Best Club Content Creator Premier League as well. footballcontentawards.com/voting. Do help us out. In the meantime, Temps, thank you very much.
Cheers, fellas. See you soon.
Asha, thank you.
Thank you.
We shall be back on Monday with, I think it's Greg, Emily, and Guy Moussi, all being well, because I know he's at the game. So do join us on Monday morning. In the meantime, have a good few days, enjoy the game, and we shall see you soon.